All right, let's get right into a release by the Criterion Collection. Always put out great material. This one that we're going to talk about tonight is two movies produced by Val Lawton. I Walked with a Zombie, directed by Jacques Tournier, and The Seventh Victim, directed by Mark Robson. There's a look at the cover, and we'll get into some of the special features. Like I always love the documentaries. There's more special features than just a documentary, but this one is an older one from 2005 that's in here. Shadows of the Dark, the Val Lawton Legacy, and it's got George Romero, John Landis, Guillermo del Toro, uh, other historians, and almost maybe the most important one is Val's son in here, who's pretty insightful. So, a little background to tell you where these what was going on at this time. These were two considered horror movies uh, from the early 40s, uh, produced and made by RKO Pictures. Now, the state of RKO at the time had just financially almost been destroyed by Orson Welles, Citizen Kane, and one other film, to where he took artistic license, and it just cost so much that it found him in a really bad spot. And so they were in search of somebody to kind of take over and direct some commercially successful films for them. So they were in search of Val Lawton. Now, for the previous 8 years leading up to this, where they found him, he had been working with David Oselnik, who worked on King Kong and also Gone with the Wind, right where um, Val actually was maybe had ran his course in that 8 year period working for his mentor, and he was, I think, being become a little disgruntled, or even though he got the opportunity to work on these great films and write, he was, I think it was time for him to move on, or maybe it wasn't his thing. So he was doing, like in Gone with the Wind, where they do the pull away scene where all the soldiers are in the field. He sort of wrote that scene thinking that it was be too impossible for them to ever film. Well, they pulled it off, and it is a great scene. That battle field scene where the soldiers um, are all laying there, and they keep panning back, and it's just this massive scene that they did pull off. Um, and so, but again, at that time, uh, it was just he was looking for something else to do. Maybe he, you know, was just tired of working under his mentor. Maybe he wanted to do things like direct these or produce these things, which is ultimately what he did. So he got offered to by RKO to come in and make some films, some commercially successful films, probably to rival the Universal monsters at the time, which they were plugging in, films loaded with whoever you could squeeze in, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, all of them. It was just commercial success over and over again, and they had the budget to do it. RKO did not, and that's where things got interesting. And he had to use whatever tactics he could to make these films. And there were 9 films, I believe, including The Cat People, The Body Snatcher, and these 2 films uh, in that time period where they were making low budget B pictures to try to rival Universal's monster films. So rather than, and like these 2 films are no different than the other, like The Cat People, to bring that up real quick, I don't think you ever actually really see a cat. Maybe there's a photo of or one quick scene, but there's no like interaction. It's not they didn't have the budget to create the monsters. So it was creating the illusion or shadows or just fear, or create a climate instead of having the budget to create the monsters. And that's exactly what they did here for the most part in these 2 films. I Walk with a Zombie. Um, it's uh, taken from a book of the same name, and also parts of it are taken from the concept of the writings of Jane Eyre. So it's a nurse that goes down to the islands. It involves voodoo, and the thing I think they did really well with I Walk with the Zombie is to create the atmosphere. So you've got this uh, the guy that hired her to come down. His wife was like in a zombie type state, and there's voodoo involved. It's a real That's the one thing I will critique about it is they almost threw the kitchen sink at some of these ideas, like one or two concepts, but then they threw in, you know, the 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 front of the slave ship. So there's a whole slave narrative um, and like I said, zombies, but without actually using a monster. They did have a really tall guy that was creepy that didn't blink in I Walk with the Zombie. That There was never really any action, just him walking around was intimidating. So that's what they did with that film. They used shadows, concepts of voodoo and shadow. Did I say shadows? Shadows and music. And luckily, they didn't have to build a lot of sets. They were able to use sets that were already built, and they could just, as long as they could shoot the film in 18 days, they got that one done. And then the second one, the seventh victim, did almost the same thing where they threw the kitchen sink at it, ideas. Like, they did accomplish creating that sort of fear, um, through shadows, music, and just eerie situations. Uh, and yeah, the seventh victim is sort of same sort of tale. The girl enters, and there's just all this stuff between occultists and Satanists and gangsters and trying to find her sister. And they they threw all these concepts in where if they could have probably, I think that'd be my only knock, if they could have narrowed it down to a little bit tighter story. But I think they felt that they needed to overcompensate for the fact that they couldn't show the monster. So they did that in writing. And, you know, I've watched both films a couple times. The Seventh Victim is a whole kind of thing I think you could critique, and people go different places with it. But all in all, I'm saying both movies do set the tone, set the mood as a 40s, as two 40s horror movies without actually showing much horror. It was all about suspense, and again, using the word shadows. Um, I want to get to the restoration on these. Um, because it's pretty impressive. They're both enjoyable movies, and I'm glad I have these. Criterion did a great job, and I want to go over the restore just real quick. That new 4K restorations were created from the 35 millimeter nitrate original camera negatives, and here in the seventh victim, the negative of the seventh victim had large amounts of mold throughout, so digital restoration helped mitigate the damage, but there is still some mold residue present in the picture. The original manure, monaural soundtracks were remastered from 35 millimeter. Um, so there you have it. Soundtrack positive for the seventh victim. So they're great movies. I'm glad. I'm super glad that they were able to step in and um, save the seventh victim from mold, and also um, do a 4K scan on I Walk with the Zombies, because they're both enjoyable movies. That's the one point I would like to make. They use sets here, sets that were already built that they had at their disposal, uh, which was great because it didn't affect their budget. Right? They were able to just kind of plug into sets that were already built. But I would like to add that as a side note. I would love to see I Walked with the Zombie done on real locations. I think, which one did we talk about? Um, the escapees in my last video, where you talk about um, the the surroundings and the real locations. That with I Walk with a Zombie, if somebody was able to do this, redo this black and white, um, same story. The actors are great in here, but to have it on locations, it would just be incredible. If they would have had that opportunity to have those um, locations for the atmosphere, this I think would be a home run. They didn't have that, unfortunately, in the 40s when they made this, but they did their best job. And again, I'm glad to own these two. I think they're great. Again, the Seventh Victim, something that you got to study. There's so many storylines. It switches up, but both of them do accomplish using atmosphere to create a mood and a horror movie. So Criterion did a great job. I'm glad to have these. And again, that would be incredible. I walked with the zombie with real locations would just be incredible. So if someone wants to make that, you're welcome to use my idea. Just give me some credits, writing credits. Maybe I'll be a producer. Who knows? All right. Well, that's those two. I hope that was helpful, and it sent you in if you were thinking about checking these out, or if you've seen these, if you like these or any other Val Lawton movies that he's produced. I think it was an important transition for RKO Pictures in Hollywood at that time to create something on a very low budget B movie and make them look this classy with no budget. He did a really great job. So there you have it. I Walked with the Zombie and the Seventh Victim by Criterion Collection. All right. If you have been here before, thanks for coming back. If you haven't been here before, welcome. And if you like this content, please consider subscribing, hitting the thumbs up button, come back, whatever, leave a comment on if you like these movies or other Val Lawton movies or other black and white movies or RKO movie, whatever. Leave some comments or whatever, or don't. But I do want to thank you for watching, and we will see you next time on Severely Cinematic.